What's poppin', y'all? I am live and we are good to go. So I'm gonna let you all go ahead and get on in this room so we can talk about the topic for today. Before I get started, the first thing that I want to say, the very first thing is I want to give a very special shout out to brother Novara or Shabazz Novara. That's what it is. Brother Shabazz Novara. He has supported and sponsored me for this video, and I thank him very much for that. And I also thank all of you all who will be coming into this room and will be listening to this video for today. So I just want to start off by saying that. And then the second thing is the topic for today is going to be about a tribute that is going to be for Angie Stone, Neely Fuller Jr., and also for Roberta Flack. So we're going to go into all of that. Good evening to Cool Colas and all the chat. B1 family, appreciate you coming through. All right, I'm going to let some more people get up in here, but we're going to go ahead and kick it off in just a few minutes and whatnot. So today, the main things that I'm going to be covering again are these tributes, and I'm going to be talking a lot about these different entertainers and also activists who have done a lot of great things for foundational Black American society and Black people as a whole. They've represented us very well. They've given us a lot of great talent, and they've also given us a lot of great information as well too. The three people that I'm going to be talking about specifically today are kind of intertwined with both things. They're either intertwined with activism to a certain extent, or they're intertwined with giving us some level of entertainment. Now, not all of them, but most of them. And what I mean by that is Neely Fuller Jr. was definitely a warrior scholar and an activist. He wasn't an entertainer, right? And Roberta Flack was an entertainer, but Angie Stone kind of had a little bit of a mix of the two. So we're really going to kind of go deep and talk about all of their legacies, because these are all people who were phenomenal and definitely need to be uplifted for the things that they have done for, again, foundational Black American society. For those of you all who are just getting into the space, how y'all doing tonight? How's y'all's week been? Y'all got any plans for the weekend? What's happening? Talk to me. And while y'all are responding and whatnot, just so y'all know, so this weekend I'm gonna be in Wilmington, North Carolina. So I'm gonna be there for a day or so, and I'm going to check out this tour called Wilmington in Color. So that's gonna be kind of on the agenda for me. And then the next week I have a book signing. So I'm going to be doing a live on Instagram for any of you all who follow me on Instagram. And I'm going to be talking about how everything was when I was in Wilmington. And I'm going to be talking about what happens with this book signing that I have, which is going to be in South Carolina. And that's Columbia, South Carolina to be exact. So that's what's going on this way. But yeah, y'all let me know what's happening your way. Again, how's y'all's week been? What's been going on? How's everybody been doing? Marcus is in the chat. What's good? How you doing, bro? Hey, how you doing, baby? Appreciate you making it through. All right, all right. Haven't been home since my birthday in January. Other than that, never forget November 8th, 1898, when you go to Wilmington. Most definitely. Most definitely. Yeah, there's a lot that I've been hearing about Wilmington and the history of what a lot of the Black people there did. So it'll be really cool to kind of learn everything that, they got to tell me on this tour and whatnot. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. But like I said, when I go on Instagram, I'll report back on kind of how it went, the things that I learned, the things that I kind of got to see, and kind of how all that went, like I said. All right, y'all, I see that it's about close to 5 minutes in, so I'll go ahead and I am going to go ahead and get started. So 2025 has already been a pretty interesting year. And when I say interesting, I mean, it's interesting in the fact that there's been a lot of deaths already, and we're only into the middle to end of March, right? And when I say there's been a lot of deaths, there's been a lot of deaths for a lot of foundational Black Americans, right? Let's kind of just go through some of the people who have passed away, unfortunately. We've had Irv Gotti, we've had Unc, we've had Dwayne Wiggins, who was a part of Tony. We've had Roberta Flack, Neely Fuller Jr., Angie Stone. The list goes on and on and on. But ultimately, what I'm getting at is there's been a lot of different people who have passed away this year. And like I said, it's only March. So for there to be that many like deaths already, I'm just like, man. But today I wanted to take some special time to uplift the three people that I named at the very beginning of this video: Neely Fuller Jr., Roberta Flack, and then Angie Stone. And we're going to kind of go all into their legacy and everything that I want to cover and kind of bring up about them, and we'll get the conversation started. And by the way, I do want to say this too. It's interesting that I'm doing another tribute because I just recently did a tribute to Dr. Frances Cress Welsing a couple days ago. So for those of you all who are not aware, she was born on March the 18th of 1935. So that means 2 days ago would have been her birthday, right? So she passed away in 2016, and I wanted to create a video where I was able to honor her legacy. And for those of you all who want to kind of know more about her and kind of what I talked about, feel free to check out the video that I made. But people should really understand how important she was to, the things that a lot of us are trying to do, and pro-Blackness and the understanding of white supremacy. So I just wanted to bring that up because it's interesting that I'm doing another tribute, because I just did a tribute 2 days ago on Frances Cress Welsing. That was the most appreciated tribute. Absolutely. Yeah. When I did it, I really wanted to kind of go into the ISIS papers, because that was one of two books, and we're going to get into Neely Fuller Jr. in a minute, but one of two books that really put me on game as to kind of what was happening in white supremacy, such as like the psychology and kind of a deeper understanding of it at the root of the problem. A lot of times we hear more, of a branch related type of thing. We hear instances of racism and that type of thing, but they really break down the concept of white supremacy to a science. And I really appreciate all the work that they did to come to these conclusions and understandings, and being able to distribute that to us so that we can get the game and get the knowledge as well too. So yeah, I definitely wanted to do a shout out to her for the great work that she did when she was on this earth. So for today, I want to go ahead and I want to kick it off by talking about Neely Fuller Jr. Now, for those of you all who do not know, as I said earlier or in the beginning of this video, Neely Fuller Jr. was a warrior scholar. He was born on October the 6th of 1929, and he passed away in February, specifically February the 1st of this year. He wrote the book, The United Compensatory Code System Concept, a compensatory counter-racist code. For those of you all who do not know what this book looks like, I'm about to show you because I actually have it here with me. This is the book, y'all. If you all do not have it, you should get this. I mean, this book is instrumental in breaking down the psychology and understanding of white supremacy. So it breaks it down to a point where it teaches you how to operate in the system of white supremacy as a Black person. So I definitely recommend that you get this book by Neely Fuller Jr. Okay, what did Marcus say here? I find it interesting that, like Malcolm X, she didn't get exposed to our generation until Hidden Colors. Even my mother, who is a boomer, didn't know who she was, which is kind of damning on their part. Yeah, most definitely. And the other thing too, and I was talking to one of my followers on Threads about this, but she was talking about how she doesn't like how a lot of people aren't talking about the death of Neely Fuller Jr. And I'm gonna bring that up, because I'm thinking about this whole thing with Frances Cress Welsing and how she died, and there wasn't like a lot of talk about her death beyond all of us in the grassroots. And I'm bringing it up because she was talking about how it makes her sad that a lot of people didn't talk about, Neely Fuller Jr. after everything that he did and all of the great information he gave us. And, I had to kind of tell her there's a lot of people, a lot of our people really aren't, privy to, a lot of these activists who have done, a lot of great things with helping us to be more knowledgeable about, again, white supremacy and everything that, is related to that. Right. So, a lot of people probably, like in our generation especially, wouldn't really know about Neely Fuller Jr. or Francis Cress Welsing because, like you said, they had a lot of parents who were like baby boomers who really just weren't on game like that. And I can go into the whole old nigga spiel and all that other stuff, right? But ultimately, what I'm getting at is we weren't really given the game, so it doesn't surprise me that a lot of us don't know about it, because let's be real, we all know that the dominant society is not going to try to educate Black people about people like Francis Cress Welsing or Neely Fuller Jr. because of their contributions to helping us to have a more justice oriented society. Let's see here. She had a great Donahue episode. I saw that. I went back and I from time to time I watch like some of her lectures and whatnot, but I saw her Donahue episode that you brought up. But yeah, I think that like I said, the Dom Society doesn't really want you to know about Francis Cress Welsing, because that would be promotion, right? That would be them putting us on game of somebody who is letting us know about their plans and the things that they're doing in the system of white supremacy. Because let's be real, I haven't really seen anybody really tackle the psychology of white supremacy since Francis Cress Welsing. It's like there was never really like a true successor. And that's what I said in the video as well too. There wasn't anybody who took up the mantle and did what Francis Cress Welsing has done or something similar. Obviously, these people are unique in their own minds, right? But my point is that nobody was similar in the idea that they were psychiatrists who talked about white supremacy's effect on Black people and then on society, in general. So yeah, we just don't really see that like that. Now, going back to Neely Fuller Jr., for those of you all who did not know, he had a radio show where he would often discuss many of the points that he made in the book that I just showed y'all. And whenever folks would ask him on this show how he was doing, his reply was always, "I'm still learning." I always thought that was very deep, that this was always what he would say whenever somebody asked him about, like, his well-being. And it's always very interesting because that was very that it was very telling of his mindset and the idea that he always was studying, the not the climate of white supremacy, but even more important, how we as Black people are affected in it. So he was aware of how it even affected him as well too, and how it was a constant process of trying to learn how to operate and how to navigate. So I always thought that was really dope that he would say that, whenever people would ask him how he was doing. And it was like almost like a trademark, like something that, he was known for. Also, too, the other thing that I found to be really almost funny about Neely Fuller Jr. is every single time that he was talking about white supremacy, he would put heavy emphasis whenever he would say white supremacist. He would say the white supremacist. Like, I don't know if y'all ever heard him say that, but like, he don't say it like how we say. We just say the white supremacist, but he'd be like the white supremacist. And I'm like, damn, he really be putting emphasis on that. So going back though, so my point is that I noticed that about him is that he had some like trademarks and some a certain cadence to the way that he spoke about white supremacy and a lot of the talking points and things like that that he said on this radio show that he was on. Neely Fuller Jr. was one of the authors who I hold in high esteem because he had a desire to combat the system of white supremacy, and he wanted to replace it with the system of justice. And throughout that book that I just showed y'all, he did a really good job again of creating this rubric that folks could follow to understand white supremacy and further how to handle communication and even conflict while being within this system. So those are the great things that you really could get from reading his book. Now, when it comes to the book that I just showed y'all, and then the ISIS papers, these two books are very instrumental even for me, because when I created my book, the Pro-Black Blurred series, exposing anti-Black media tropes the blurred way, I did a heavy reference on their books because, they really broke down, again, white supremacy so well, to the point where, I was able to take things from, the root before explaining why I was even talking about tropes to begin with. So for those of you all who do not know, I'm going to bring this up real quick. I want to show y'all my book once more, because I've done this before in a couple of different lives. So this is my book, the Pro-Black Blurred series, exposing anti-Black media tropes the blurred way. This is a book where I break down the tropes that we see in media, and that covers, when we're looking at TV shows, we're looking at movies, and we're looking at even video games to a certain extent as well too. I also cover like the concept of social media to a certain extent. Now, when I cover different concepts into this book, I don't just give you a list of tropes. I talk about it from the root. I talk about like what is white supremacy, how it works, and then how you must understand that component before you can, dig into what tropes are what, why it's happening, and what's the true meaning of everything that you're seeing. So I bring all that up to say that if you look at Neely Fuller Jr.'s work, and you look at Frances Cress Welsing's work, they both do a good job in basically detailing how white supremacy works, to the point where other people like myself can take that information and then apply it to, different concepts. In this case, tropes that we see in media. So I definitely use those two books as a template to detail my own content. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about with Neely Fuller Jr., I want to highlight some of the big things, like the big takeaways that I got from the work that he did. The first very, very big takeaway that really stuck with me after reading his book was the outlining of the 9 areas of activity. And these 9 areas of activity are the 9 areas in which white supremacy dominates, where human activity exists. And these areas include 1, economics; 2, education; 3, entertainment; 4, labor; 5, law; 6, politics; 7, religion; 8, sex; and 9, war or counter war. The first reason why I really like that he outlined this is because it really gave me a great understanding of these different places where white supremacy exists. It did a lot of it took a lot of discernment to realize that all of these things needed to be categorized, and it was great because it gave us an organized way to look at how white supremacy shows up. And again, we can categorize like the different areas that it shows up at. So he really did a good job in outlining that, so that we have an understanding of where the white supremacy that we may see sometimes actually exists. The next thing that Neely Fuller Jr. talked about that really stuck with me is, and this is something that I implement even today when it comes to the way that I communicate with people. And I'm paraphrasing when I say this, but he said what I'm about to say in so many words. When in conflict, it's best to ask questions to get a certain understanding. And the reason why this lesson is so important is because a lot of times people like to go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Now, doing that in certain cases and certain instances can reveal a lot, especially if you look at like my social media page and things like that, because a lot of times I'm teaching you how to respond to people who are either samboing or being blatantly racist, and how to combat certain things. Because there's a lot of talking points that these people use, and you need the tools to be able to talk against these types of things, right? So that's a certain nuance. But my point here is that in general conversation, we should be asking questions when we don't have clarity on what the person who we're having a conversation with is saying, and when there is an opposing point. So the whole goal should be to be constructive. And that's something that he talked about in his book. We should try to have constructivity in our conversations, because anything that is not constructive is destructive. So when you have conversations, it's important to ask questions to understand how somebody may have came to a conclusion if you don't agree with it, or like getting clarity to their point, especially if it's a point that's shocking or something that you never heard, or again, you just don't necessarily align with. And the other thing that I liked about that is he had a good code about how to operate when the conversation is basically going bad. And one of the things that he said is the first thing that you want to do whenever somebody gets the conversation just takes a nasty turn and you don't like where it's going, is to say, well, what would he say? I'll talk to you some other time. That's what it was. I'll talk to you some other time. And that's important for me, especially when I think about trying to understand the mindset of who it is that I'm having a conversation with and the people that I associate with. It's very important for me to implement discernment. And even with the Cool Colas brand, one thing I've always talked about and I've told people is, discernment is key in everything that you do. So for me, I try to discern who it is that I'm associating with. What is their mindset? What are the things that they believe in? What are the things that they feel strongly about? I never am in the business of trying to change somebody's mind or heart or belief system. I just want to get an understanding of who it is that I'm having a conversation with. And that way, my next step can be to, connect with an individual if I, have discerned from them that they're like-minded, connect with somebody who is like-minded, and then we work together. But before that, I want to have a good understanding of who it is that I speak with. I say all this to say, Neely Fuller Jr. gave me that template. He gave me that understanding, and he put it out in plain sight so that I could, use that in my everyday conversations and the way that I just handle myself and in business as well too. So I definitely appreciate that he gave me that game. The next thing that I like that Neely Fuller Jr. said, and again, I'm going to paraphrase when I say this, is when we as Black people are discussing issues that impact us in a system of white supremacy, we must stop referring to these things as complaints or gripes. They are reports, because we are reporting on the climate of white supremacy that affects us. Now, again, I paraphrased like hell. I ain't gonna hold you up. But the point is that a lot of us will like to compare the idea of complaining or whining about things that are trivial with the idea of reporting on the climate of white supremacy and how it affects Black people. And Neely Fuller Jr. created a great template to show the differences between these two things. Because one thing that I've noticed is that you have a lot of these Sambos and a lot of these suspected white supremacists who will get out here and say stuff like, you're being a victim. You have a victim mentality, which I don't even use that word whatsoever, because everybody loves to conflate it and they mix these two concepts up. So what people typically do is they'll use that term to mean anything where people are talking about, how they have been, they have been harmed in a certain atrocity. And them discussing that is supposed to be some form of victimhood. But my point is that there's a difference between being a perpetual victim, like somebody who is constantly complaining about something trivial, versus being somebody who is a victim of white supremacy, because these individuals are victimizers. These are two different concepts. And Neely Fuller Jr. did a great job in separating these two things. We're not complainers when we talk about these things. We're reporters. It's no different than, and I love to use this analogy, than having like a weatherman. Because a lot of times you'll have like a weatherman and they'll be on TV and they'll tell you about like the forecast and that type of thing and what's happening, right? And what I found is that those who, hear about these reports that we do where we talk about the climate of white supremacy, what they like to do is this thing that I call solution samboing. Now, I've talked about this on multiple videos before, and I think I may have talked about this on one of my lives, but what they like to do is talk about implementing solutions as if they're a solutions oriented person. But this person is just trying to get attention because they love to do it in front of a bunch of people, and they're really trying to undermine you talking about the climate of white supremacy, and they're trying to act like you're not somebody who's proactive. And ultimately, a lot of these people who are doing this are actually not proactive themselves. So I say all this to basically say it's ridiculous for somebody who is claiming to be a solutions oriented person to then take that mentality and go to a weatherman and say, what are your solutions now that you told me that it's about to be raining? Like, what the hell do you think the solutions are? And the reality is that this is shit that you should be figuring out yourself. You should be figuring out your own damn solution, not worrying about people talking about what's happening. So that's why I say that we're almost like weathermen to the point where we're talking about the climate of white supremacy, something that we can, like, at this moment not really help. We can try to fight back against it, but we can't destroy it in a day. So that's why I say that we're like weathermen in the idea that we are talking about the climate of white supremacy and how that affects us as people. So yeah, that's one of the other lessons that I took from him. The final lesson that I took from Neely Fuller Jr. was, if you don't understand racism or white supremacy, what it is and how it works, everything else you understand or think you understand will only confuse you. I love this lesson specifically because a lot of people have a base level understanding of racism. And most of the time, that base level understanding is that it has to be overt, it has to be blatant, it has to be something in your face, it has to be something where there's some type of explicit evidence. Otherwise, it's not really racism, or it's nitpicking, or it's trivial, or whatever somebody wants to say about it, right? But this showed that Neely Fuller Jr. was acknowledging the complexity of white supremacy and the complexity of having to understand that a lot of the white supremacy and racism that you will see today will be covert, and how you have to have a base level you have to have more than a base level understanding. You have to fully understand that it will show up in different forms, and that this is a system that operates in deception, and it's a system that also operates in confusion. Let's see here. Tethers are perfect examples of solution samples because they'll use that lame ass, I came over with less than you niggas. You just need to work hard. You need to work hard. That's probably how they say they need to work hard. Let's see. Mentality while asking why FBAs call out white supremacy. Exactly. A lot of them are solution samples. That's one thing that I've noticed too. A lot of times, like they'll come up with this mentality when we're just speaking the truth about, again, the climate of white supremacy. So I've seen this a lot because with me talking about tropes in media, I'll get it a lot because a lot of people will just deviate to, well, this is bad. Or if you're saying this is bad, where are your solutions? Where are your solutions? They'll go straight to that. And it's like, okay, well, let's stick to the topic. Let's talk about what was actually brought up in the first place. Let's stick to the trope and let's really dive into why it is the way it is, not what can we do about it? Because here's the thing. A lot of y'all don't even have an understanding of what's actually happening in the first place. And ultimately, when I'm putting these things out there, I'm teaching people who want to get the game, not you Sambos who are eating some buttermilk biscuits. I don't really give a fuck about, your knowledge and what you're trying to learn or not trying to learn, because ultimately, if you're going to be a Sambo, you're not really going to try to listen to what I'm telling you in the first place. My point in saying all that is to say that a lot of these solution Sambos, will bring that up, not because they actually care about solutions. They only care about attention because they think that the maybe 2 or 3 likes that they may get from some other silly ass negroid is going to be, some type of pipeline to get them viral attention and all this other shit, when all they're really trying to do is cause chaos when we're talking about things that are actually constructive. So that's why they do that, and that's why I had to tell people there's a difference between being a solutions oriented person and being a solution Sambo. A solutions oriented person looks for a solution, and chances are they're so focused on trying to find a solution, they don't have time to try to go back and undermine us when we're talking about speaking truth to power. We're talking about white supremacy. We're talking about things that are happening to black people. Somebody who's solutions oriented, they don't have time to spend time on people's platforms arguing back and forth with them, because what you'll find a lot of times is these individuals don't even really know what the problem is to begin with. So that's why I say that there's a big difference between being solutions oriented and just being a solution sambo, because someone who's solutions oriented is going to put all of their energy into trying to create something constructive because they have an understanding of the truth. And ultimately, while they're doing that, they're not going to be somebody who's going to undermine the truth that they see. They're going to repost it. They see it on social media. They're going to be talking about it. It's going to be, in them to naturally do the same things that a lot of us are doing when we're speaking truth to power. So I just wanted to say that real quick. Now, I want to move on to the next tribute, and I want to talk about Roberta Flack. So for those of you all who do not know who Roberta Flack is and you've been living under a rock, she's an R&B artist and a musician. She is from Black Mountain, North Carolina. She was born February the 10th of 1937, and she unfortunately passed away February the 24th of this year. And Roberta Flack was often known to use her platform at times to talk about civil rights and the experience of us as foundational Black Americans. So I always thought that was really cool too. She had numerous records, and they date back to the 70s and 80s because, during that time, we had a lot of foundational Black Americans who were creating great music. And she was one of the people who was doing this. She was known for, putting out songs such as Killing Me Softly with his song, The Closer I Get to You, and Where Is the Love. The one that I always remember explicitly, or the two, are Killing Me Softly with his song and Where Is the Love. Like those are songs that are iconic to, her catalog and that, she was known for. Matter of fact, when it came to Killing Me Softly with his song, this was a hit song that came out #1 on the charts in 1973. So it was actually a pretty big hit. So the other thing too was that Roberta Flack was a pianist. She helped to also develop the quiet storm style of music, which is kind of like a mix of like a lightweight mix of like R&B and jazz. So you saw her with this style. There were a bunch of other artists who also had this as well too. So she was again instrumental in pushing this type of style forward, and with a lot of her music and the stuff that she put out there. So that was great. And then another thing that you all may not have known about her was that she was the first foundational Black American teacher at an all-white school in Chevy Chase, Maryland. So I thought this was really cool because Chevy Chase, Maryland was an area, or is an area, that's actually predominantly white. And so that means that she made history being, the first Black person, foundational Black American, but Black person, period, to have been a student teacher in this school. So I always thought that was really cool, that she, accomplished that as well too, even outside of, her doing music. And what I'm finding is that there's a lot of foundational Black Americans who have done a lot of scholarly things and a lot of great work outside of just their music. So I like to make it a point when I'm talking about entertainers and things like that to highlight some of these things, because we know them just for their music, but they do so much more. For those of y'all who also do not know, she died of cardiac arrest at the age of 88. The next tribute that I want to talk about is of Angie Stone. And I wanted to kind of move into the whole Angie Stone thing because I also want to talk about the breakdown of what I think was happening around her death, because there's a lot of foul play from my perspective and a lot of other people's perspectives as well too. And we really are going to need to dive deep into that as well. Angie Stone was born on December the 18th of 1961, and she died March the 1st of this year. Angie Stone was from Columbia, South Carolina. She was legendary and she was phenomenal. She had songs like No More Rain in This Cloud, More Than a Woman, and Wish I Didn't Miss You Anymore. But the one song, and this was my favorite song by Angie Stone, was Brother. And let me tell you why I really like this song, y'all. Brother was a black men, I would say a black men tribute anthem. It was a song that was explicitly for the black man and trying to uplift him. And I really like this song because it was put out during a time period which was like the early 2000s, I believe 2001 actually, where there was a lot of propaganda that was out there to diminish the black male image. And what I mean by diminishing it, a lot of us were, portrayed as thugs, criminals, and things like that during that time period. A lot of times, even if you like go and you look it up now, people will try to make it seem like there wasn't really a whole lot of issues of racism and things like that that went on in the 2000s. But, there was a lot of propaganda that was being put out there that was diminishing us in our image. And you saw it in media, you saw it in music, you saw it in movies, you saw it in a lot of different places. And this is specifically the early 2000s. So we're not even talking about 2000, the 2010s or like the 2020s, but just like the 2000s. And her putting out this song sent a totally different message than the stuff that we would typically see. And that's one of the reasons why she deserves a tribute. Because nowadays we don't see any music that uplifts black men. You have to kind of look for gems out of like the throwbacks and some of the R&B songs that you may have seen. You may even have to look at people like I think that a lot of Monica's music does a good job of uplifting black men, but I'd use her as an example. But see how I had to kind of go back to even somebody like her, like some of her like old songs and things like that. It's just, we don't really see a lot of that in the 2020s. We don't see, and really we didn't see that in the 2010s too much either. When it comes to a lot of the music that we see, it's a lot of sex music and all this other stuff that's going on. But it doesn't, and some of it is even like you see a less of a foundational Black American influence overall. You don't really see, a lot of us who are putting things out. You see a lot of Caribbean influence and African influence now as well too. And a lot of these same people will show up at like the BET Awards and things like that. But my point is that you don't see a lot of unity in music between Black men and Black women today. And with Angie Stone, I mean, she literally made that song about Black men and calling us kings and all types of stuff. So I really like it just for what it clearly was intended for. Now, even if you listen to like the chorus of this song, just the things that she said just in that part alone. Literally, she says, "Black brother, strong brother, there is no one above you. I want you to know that I'll be with you for forever true." So even in the chorus alone, she's saying that over and over again. And see, music has an important effect on our psychology. So to reiterate that same phrase over and over again, think about what it does to the psyche of a Black man who's hearing that and the way that it uplifts him. So we have to really acknowledge how much emphasis was put into, creating something like that. And I'll even be honest with you. I still bump that song now. Like I literally was in the car the other day going to the grocery store to get some food to make some chicken wings or some shit. And I literally was bumping this song on the way back home. Like no lie. So I actually have it on my iPhone right now. So that's why I say like I pay attention to when we see those types of messages. And in that song, I definitely noticed like how she was trying to speak out positively, to the Black man. The thing about Angie Stone was that she was really a writer and she understood what was happening in the industry. And I'm prone to believe that there was a lot of foul play like everyone else has been saying that, was happening with her, before her death. And I'm gonna have to put the tinfoil kufi on for a second, but I have to just ask a few questions myself because there was a lot of weird things that were kind of happening, there's a lot of weird things that were happening here. So, for example, do you all think that it's weird that she made a video exposing the industry shortly before her death? Like, do you think the fact that somebody offed her, or the fact that she passed away, was killed, whatever you want to call it, the fact that this happened shortly before she made a video talking about how bad the industry was and how a lot had been stolen from her and a lot had been taken from her? Also, do you think that it's weird that during her death, or yeah, during the day of her death, she was in a vehicle with, I believe, 8 other people, and she was the only one in the vehicle to actually pass away? And by the way, just so I can kind of like go back, this is one of the things that I kind of noticed from her video. I noticed that she was addressing again how a lot of money had been taken from her, a lot of money had been stolen from her, and she recognized that she would have been able to retire 20 years ago if she would have gotten the money from that she deserved from like all of like what she made from the records that she did. So it's clear that she was trying to get money from Universal Music Group and they basically weren't budget. But let's go back to her death. Who was charged in this crime? Like, who was charged with, you know, the car basically being hit by a semi and then it leading to her death, but also the injuring of the people who were in the car with her? Who was arrested? Why haven't we seen this person? Why haven't we heard about this person? Why do we not know their name? What happened with the stories of those who survived? Like, what are their accounts of what happened? How come this is not being taken into consideration? How come these things are not coming out as well too? And I mean, again, this was March the 1st. It's now March the 20th. So 19 days have passed by and we haven't heard shit about anything related to that. Let's see here. What I'm also noticing is that when certain artists start understanding owning their masters, they get murked somehow. We're going to get into that. I'm glad you brought that up. We're going to get into that. Notice one hit wonders or trash artists don't meet the same fate. Exactly. I do believe they assassinated her. So do I. So do I. In Black Op level faction. I 100% agree with you. Let's see. PM. I saw what was posted on YouTube, but she didn't say anything specific. She didn't say anything specific, but what she did allude to was that a lot of money was taken from her. Like, she kind of talked about, praising God and all this other stuff. She talked about that, but she also talked about the fact that she could have been retired 20 years ago. And that's very telling because the first thing that you have to think about is, well, why wasn't she? So it makes you point to the music industry who basically like owned her stuff before she was trying to, get all of her money back and whatnot. So this, I think we can make the argument that she didn't really say anything new, but at the same time, we can look at the fact that her saying something was her speaking out about it, whereas some artists won't say a word. So I'm giving her credit for basically doing that. They went out of their way to kill her somehow and staged the whole crash. Absolutely. That's truly what I believe as well, too. And so all these questions, though, that I said, they're not being asked, and then we're not given the information that that we need on kind of what happened with it, right? Because again, we don't know who was charged in this crime. Because I mean, to literally like hit a whole van with your semi, there's got to be somebody who's charged for that, right? Nobody was arrested. Nobody, no stories on the survivors, any words that they had, or anything like that. And it makes you think. Like, we know that there's some foul play, and a lot of us here suspect that it was orchestrated in a certain way, right? But we also don't know if the people who were in the vehicle with her were a part of it. So much is just not being revealed to us. It's hard for us to really know what all like the way things happen, like what was said, who did what. We know that that there's a strong possibility that the labels that she was affiliated with at some point probably had something to do with it, but we don't know the ins and outs and who was around her and who also was a part of that, who was an op, like I think Slender Sporty had said. Now, the thing that people need to kind of understand with this is that white supremacy is covert and deceptive, and they do shady things on the back end and they stay quiet about the details. And this goes back to what I had said earlier about Neely Fuller Jr. and how, he detailed that white supremacy is, deceptive and a covert type of system that doesn't show you what they're doing in plain sight, or they often don't show you what they're doing in plain sight. Now we really need to break down this whole record label thing, right? Because there's like a big three of record labels that tend to have a lot of music artists. And from my perspective, these three would be Sony, Universal, and Warner Brothers. And what I notice is that there's a trend, if you just look at these three labels, of artists just dying off, but being a part of one of these three to some extent. And there's a lot of people who are suspecting that Clive Davis has something to do with a lot of this, right? Excuse me, because Clive Davis is, working with Sony, right? He's got Sony. And then you have Clive Davis, who also owned J Records and Arista Records as well, too. Clive Davis also didn't have a very good relationship, it seems like, with Angie Stone, because there was even like an interview, or not an interview, there was even like a report that was done where Angie Stone talked about how Clive Davis was trying to keep her away from having an interview with Oprah because, of her weight. He thought she was overweight and stuff like that. So, it's clear that they didn't really have a good relationship. So it's not, beyond belief that, somebody like that would, attempt to take out an artist that they didn't, like I said, have a good rapport with, who's trying to get her masters. Also, some of these other labels and certain things that have happened to other artists as well too, who have worked with them and they were either trying to get their masters, they were trying to own all their own stuff, or they got this big old check, like this multi-million-dollar check or deal before, or I guess like shortly before, something happened to them. So you have Sam Cooke, whose death is still a big mystery. Sam Cooke was somebody who was affiliated with people like Muhammad Ali. And Sam Cooke tried to get his masters, and he was all about ownership, and he was just really clicked in with pro-Black society. And he was killed by a gunshot wound. And again, it's a mystery. And he was with Warner Brothers. Then you had Prince. Got his catalog. Prince was all about Black business. He was all about ownership. Prince was extremely pro-Black. I mean, you could listen to some of the stuff that he said. I mean, Prince was even, from what I understand, a fan of Hidden Colors. And what happened to Prince? He died. And then the wealth thing is questionable. Like who gets the wealth? How does all that work and whatnot? And Prince also, too, when he passed, he wasn't old. I mean, Prince was what? He was either in his 50s or 60s, I believe. I can't think of his exact age right now, but I thought he may have been in his 50s. So he was young actually when he passed. So Warner Brothers, they had Sam Cooke, they had Prince, both had very strange deaths. Michael Jackson got his publishing, went on to tour to try to keep his catalog and whatnot. He ends up basically getting chalked out by Conrad Murray. And he was tied up with Sony. So now that's two companies that have this pattern happening. Now you have Sony, now you have Warner Brothers, right? Even if you look at something like Irv Gotti, he signed an $100 million deal a while back to get his catalog, and while having his catalog, and I know that he sold some of it and whatnot, but um, years later, what ends up happening? He dies because of Chinese food, or that's at least the what had been said, right? Then you had Whitney Houston and Vesta Williams. They both died while under Arista Records, who while being under Clive Davis, right? Both found dead in hotel rooms. Both were given multi-million-dollar deals. So now there's a pattern going on, right? You had Angie Stone, who worked with Universal at one point. I believe she worked with Sony, I believe, was it? So there's that. You have Michael Jackson working with Sony, Prince working with Warner Brothers, Sam Cooke working with Warner Brothers as well too. So you have all of these different artists who are working with. He was 50, and so was Michael. Okay, so I was right. So he was in his 50s. Okay, he was in his 50s. Got you. Yeah, I knew Michael was in his 50s for sure. I couldn't think of if Prince was in his 50s or 60s, but I figured it was around that area. So I'm glad that you actually said that. Let's see. What else did Shabazz say here? It seemed like she had been surrounded by shady people the whole time. Absolutely. And that's why I say that it's weird that even with Angie like being in that vehicle, dying, and the other people around her didn't. They got injured, but they didn't die. That's weird. And then we just didn't hear nothing from them. So it's a good chance that she probably was around, people who just didn't have her best interest. But the white supremacists at these record labels aren't working alone. They have co-conspirators. Of course they do. Of course they do. And I mean, think about like how long they live. I mean, Clive Davis is what, like 90 or some shit like that, and he's still like kicking, right? So I'm saying all this to say that it's odd that all of these artists would just randomly pass away, and then people can just explain it as some type of vague thing where it's like, oh yeah, they were shot and they were gone, or oh they were on drugs and they overdosed, or something happened to them. It was a bad procedure and it ended their life. Like it's always like some type of freak accident that happens to them, and it happens to them while they're kind of young. Because for me, I consider somebody who was in their 50s or 60s kind of young for death, at least. And mind you, I'm not trying to speak about death in a way where I think that there's an age where people deserve to die. I ain't saying it like that. But what I'm saying is that 50s and 60s is kind of a young age to just randomly just die at, especially when you have these record executives like Clive Davis who are living into their 90s and have all of this different money. And like Marcus Bowden had kind of brought up a little bit earlier, when it comes to a lot of these different record labels, they know that there is profitability in the death of these artists, because after a while, like their records, their hit records kind of fall off, right? They do well when they hit the charts. They have like these great hits and all this other stuff, and they become big and whatnot. But after a while, new artists come in, and these old artists, I mean, they can sing their old stuff and that type of thing, but they're just not really on the charts like that anymore. And so they know that as soon as these artists die off, they're going to go right back up in the charts, because people want to honor them, especially our people. We see one of our own, something happens to them and that type of thing. We want to go and we want to try to support them, but there's a lot that's kind of going on in the background. And a lot of them are profiting off of that, especially if they weren't able to get their masters or get, own their own catalog and that type of thing. And there's always like fights later with what's happening with the estates. We know that there was a big fight with, people, specifically the white supremacists, trying to, get a hold of Michael Jackson's estate and all this other stuff. So there was that. And also, too, they know that, there's also a big old insurance claim that they can get, when they die as well, too. So that's another bag that they get, for these artists' deaths. So it's not beyond belief that a group of people who had such disregard for these artists when they were part of their labels would literally orchestrate to get more money off of these artists if they can't, get anything from them by either their masters or, stealing their royalties or whatever the case may be. They'll try to off them so that, they that they can, get another bag. It's not beyond belief. So that's one of the things that, we have to kind of understand about the whole, Angie Stone thing and what happened, and the idea of people kind of going out and speaking out about these different, record labels and the things that they've done, that also kind of puts them on their radar. They have an idea of who is either fed up with the bullshit or who has like a pro-black mindset, and they want to get them up out the paint. Now, I don't know how many of you all have seen this, but Tyler Perry recently did a speech, and he was talking about how pissed off he was when it came to Angie Stone not getting her money. And I listened to it. I listened to what he had to say. And a lot of people are behind Tyler Perry because they're like, yeah, this is not right. This is not, it's not cool that she couldn't get her money. And we're behind Tyler Perry because he's hell bent on trying to figure out what happened and whatnot. So here's the thing. And here's my take on it. I've never been a fan of Tyler Perry or the moves that I know that he's been making, and his content is, questionable as well too, right? But the way I see this is, and there's multiple ways to look at it, is that some of his reaction, it could be genuine, but there's still problems, right? One of the biggest problems is that Tyler Perry is not trying to get a real understanding of the way that white supremacy and racism works. And he's not trying to explain that to his kids. So it shows that Tyler Perry, if he's genuine, is being more reactive than he is being strategic, which is not the way that we need to be. So Tyler Perry, by actually saying the stuff that he said, it shows that he's just like, oh, well, this is just wrong. This is just wrong. But he's ignoring, like totally ignoring the fact that, this is all happening because there's a system of white supremacy in place that's doing this to these artists. So that's why I say that he's being more reactive than proactive and kind of understanding what's happening. And the other way to look at this is that it's just not genuine, right? Tyler Perry is Tyler Perry's speech reeks of controlled opposition. Yep. That's what I was going to get to my second point, which is that Tyler Perry comes off like this is something that he's saying because there's hype around her death. And he knows that if he says that, other people are going to get totally behind that. And I would kind of like to see, what if he lives up to, his word saying that, I'm going to get to the bottom of that. Because me personally, with somebody going back and saying, I don't want to teach my kids about racism, blah, 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 and they start, quoting Bible verses and kind of talking like, real religious and shit like that. A lot of times they don't have any intentions of trying to really get deep into those types of things. And Tyler Perry knows that, Tyler Perry has so much going with like his studio and all this other stuff. I don't believe that he's really going to dig that deep into this issue. I, like Marcus said, think that this is controlled opposition. That's exactly what I thought. It's an opportunity to take eyes off of what he's done. Absolutely. That's what I think. I think that he's doing this solely because it's something that it's like a pop, right? It's like this is something that's trending. The idea that Angie Stone died is a trending topic. So him talking about that is him hopping onto the trend, but as a relevant person, that gives him positive clout, for lack of better words. So I'm with Marcus on the idea that it's more of the second one. So even if it was genuine, it still wouldn't be executed properly because, again, he doesn't really care to explain to his kids about racism. And also, too, during like that whole, pandemic thing, where they were trying to give everybody the, he was in there like he had the doctor that came in trying to talk to black folks like they were stupid and all this other stuff. So that he's willing to go with these different things. And even like Monique has called him out about it and all this other stuff. So we already know his get up, right? So I'm more of the mindset that he's doing this because it's a popular topic that he can capitalize on, and it like brother Shabazz here said, can take attention off of the negative things that he's done, and the things that we describe amongst the pro-black grassroots that he's done that has not been helpful to the community. So that's really what I think is happening with that, y'all. So I personally am not with that. I think it's controlled opposition, and anytime I see that, it's just it doesn't really sway me. But yeah, I saw that whole speech, because I know during that speech too, he was talking about how people were criticizing his films and all this other stuff. And Tyler Perry's got to stop bitching about that. I just got to be honest. He's got to stop bitching, because every single time somebody says something about his films being having bad writing, which they do, he's got to have like this little kind of snippy comment. Like, because I remember he said something about how, well, I tell real stories about real people and the things they've been through. And then he's asking he was talking about a young lady who he spoke to, and how she was he said he found out how old she was. She said she was 25, and he said, well, just keep living. So now he's just old nigga babbling. So that's why I say, like, Tyler Perry is just he's trying to find ways to make himself look good, and he used that as an opportunity to do that from my perspective. Now, again, I think that no matter what argument you make about what was intended with that, the only thing that we can really say is that there's not going to be any positive resolution that's really going to come from it. Or at least that's I think the general thing that we all can pretty much agree on, is that whether he's being genuine or not, it's not going to warrant anything, which I don't believe he's being genuine at all, like the brothers in here have alluded to. But yeah, y'all. So I wanted to just make sure that I did this video to, talk about, like, first of all, give a tribute, obviously, to a lot of our foundational Black American icons who have passed away or were killed, but I also wanted to talk about that Angie Stone situation, because originally I was going to do a video on this topic, but I figured I might as well just do it all together collectively in this live, because a lot of time had kind of passed by, and it's something that I really wanted to tackle. And I wasn't going to go into it so in depth, because there were so many things I wanted to cover. But I do think it's important that we have a conversation about, the music industry and kind of what they're doing, with these artists. And I've told people, this is the reason why we need to own everything that we do and everything that we create, because there are so many people in the dominant society who are trying to take our intellectual property. And this is something that we've seen since back in the day, since slavery, really. They want to take Black inventions and get patents on them and then say that it's theirs. And we see that now in modern day with music and things like that. And that's why, even with me as a comic book creator, a writer, and as somebody who eventually wants to have these things in the movies, TV shows, and other types of projects, I want to own everything that I create. I do not want people to have a piece of the pie, because I already know, like, what the game is in others' faces. Because what I'm realizing, and this goes back to what Neely Fuller Jr. was talking about, I realized that this goes back to how I said all of these things are interconnected, and why that first point about him pointing out the areas of activity are important, because it shows you the different spaces where we have tried to create our own thing and own our own things, and then somebody in the dominant society tried to take it from underneath us, profit off of it, and leave us crumbs. Let's see here. The other thing about Tyler Perry is that he hasn't made anybody stars. Excited for Medea. Oh, except for Medea. Okay. Say what you want about Spike Lee. He put Denzel and others on the map with iconic nostalgic classics. Yeah, no, that's true. Absolutely. Now, he was doing a little buck dancing during the during this last election, right? I ain't gonna hold you up. He was doing some hella buck dancing. But to your point though, I agree. Spike Lee did, put some people on the map. So that is very true. When it came to Tyler Perry, we really haven't seen that. And I think the main reason why is because the quality is different. A lot of the joints that Spike Lee put out were really high quality. They just were really well done, and they were black classics that we could really enjoy and see, a lot of great messages from, right? But a lot of stuff that we see from Tyler Perry, it's not the same. I mean, the writing is shitty, the messages is shitty. It's still like the same deceptive messaging that we see in a lot of the stuff that the dominant society puts out there. And it's like, I just don't really, like you said, hear a lot or see a lot about stars really being born, working with him. A lot of these same people had some form of notoriety before they even started working with him, or, they don't really have very much, even with being in multiple films that he's actually created, right? So that's one of the things that I kind of noticed about him as well, too. But yeah, it's important for us to really own our own stuff. And that's why I like to talk about how in entertainment, specifically in movies, TV shows, and things like that, we see a lot of these things on in media, and we see the representation and the way that we're portrayed. And I always tell people it's more important for us to create our own thing, tell our own stories, and create authenticity. And again, have our own production studios, have our own writers, have our own like producers, have people who are going to put these things in place, because ultimately these are people who are going to either use our faces or use things that we've created and then not give us the pay or the notoriety that we truly deserve. And what I'm starting to see too, and this is something that I really desperately need to highlight and people really need to pay attention to, when it comes to people who own their own thing, black people who own their own thing, have their own studio, have their own writers, have their own content, that type of thing. We also need people who are part of the pro-black grassroots who are doing these things. There's a lot of black, uh, entrepreneurs who aren't really on code, and they're doing their own thing. And a lot of us, we have mixed feelings about the whole thing, right? We want black people to succeed, but we don't see a lot of people who have our same mindset with the way that they're moving. What up, Cool Colas? Tori and Rain, what's happening, family? I'm glad you were able to make it to the live. Yeah, we're just we're chopping it up right now about well, I was doing a tribute to Angie Stone, Roberta Flack, and then and Neely Fuller Jr. But I kind of got into this groove talking about how we need to own everything, because what I've been noticing is that in the music industry, a lot of these artists are trying to go back and they're trying to own their masters and their catalog and whatnot, and then something ends up happening to them, and how we need to just be smart from the get-go and just create our own things and make sure that we have ownership and we make smart moves to get the stuff that we need to get. That's why I was saying that even in the entertainment piece, where we see entertainment media like TV shows, movies, things like that, we need to create our own stuff, own our own stuff, have like full ownership, to the point where nobody is able to take from us and like give us crumbs after they've either used our faces or the stuff that we've actually created. So yeah, so that's kind of like the whole idea here, is that we need to make sure that we're putting this in motion. And that's why I told y'all the main thing that I've been working on is trying to get this comic book out here, like my comic books, because I want to have it where these things are out there and they get notoriety, and then at a certain point I can work with some type of black producer or somebody who would turn, the things that I'm creating into movies or TV shows and that type of thing. Because a lot of the ideas that I have, y'all, I haven't really shared with you all some of the comics, like the comic book series and things like that I've actually made. But I have some really great ideas, and I want to do some lives on it, like even here on YouTube. So like y'all can kind of hear what I've been kind of cooking up here. And these things, I have no doubt that they're going to take off once I'm able to kind of get them out to the forefront. But I want to work with people who are like-minded. I want to work with artists who are like-minded. I want to work with people who are kind of on the same like wavelength, same frequency, who want to, put these types of things out there. Because we have to, do, the whole ownership thing, not just in the music entertainment media space, but also in the televised media space. But yeah, y'all. So that's pretty much all I have for today. I wanted to just make sure that I made this video and kind of hopped on here to have a conversation with y'all. I didn't plan to be on here too long, but I wanted to, put this on out here. I appreciate all y'all who have come through real quick. If y'all want to throw me a little something, I'm going to put the link to my PayPal here in the chat. Just give me 1 second. And yeah, I'm going to be having another video next week. You all voted on the next topic. I'm going to be talking about Pop the Balloon. Specifically, I'm going to be breaking down some of the issues that I see with, from watching the Arlette version of it, the Arlette Amuli version, the issues that I see with the way that, they're doing it, the men, the women, and even some of the good things as well, too. I'm going to break it all down because I noticed that a lot of people had talked to me about wanting to kind of hear my thoughts about it. And I would keep putting it on the poll so people could try to vote on it and whatnot. But it wouldn't win because, a lot of times people will vote on other topics because people voted on that X-Men topic. So I talked about that. And then I also talked about, other stuff, different weeks and whatnot. I talked about WWE and stuff like that. And people voted on that instead of wanting to hear about the whole Pop the Balloon thing. So a lot of people were asking me to do it, but every time it was time to vote, it would never win. So my point in saying all that is I'm going to do a video, like a live, where I actually talk about that. And I'll actually have some examples and things to kind of show that kind of support what I'm saying. I really don't like to show videos and things like that on these lives, really on any of my videos whatsoever, because, there's the fair use thing and, copyrights. I don't want to really deal with all that. But with Pop the Balloon, I don't really think that's a thing just yet. So I can like show y'all some stuff and whatnot. So I definitely will have that ready for next week when we meet. But it's going to be the same ordeal. It's going to be the same time, same place, same day. And we're going to make that a regular thing as well, too, for right now. We're going to have it where whenever I do lives, it's going to be on a Thursday at 8 o'clock or around 8, unless otherwise stated, or unless I have something going on, or like I say, hey, I need to move it to this other day. Because I think there was one day where I had it where it was like on a Saturday and whatnot. But I think I'm going to do these on Thursdays from now on because it's just a better day where I can do it, for my schedule. But yeah, we'll get it popping next week with the Pop the Balloon topic, and we'll be covering a bunch of different things because I think I've told y'all this too. When it comes to what I'm doing on this channel, I may talk about tropes sometimes. I may talk about like movie breakdowns and kind of some of the things I notice. I may talk about agendas. I may talk about things that are going on in Black news, that type of thing. But every now and again, I might cover some relationship related things, especially when it comes to the dynamic of like Black relationships. And I think the Pop the Balloon thing is going to be a very interesting topic to, really dive into and talk about. So we're definitely going to get it popping for sure next week. All right, y'all, I'm going to get up out of here. I got a few things I got to take care of, but we will definitely be talking again on Thursday. I appreciate all of y'all who came through, supported, talked it up, chatted it up, put in your input on this topic. And like I said, we will be talking soon. Other than that, I'll talk to y'all later. Peace out.